Dollar. Dirt or money, no soul. Had to go and get it, ain't no time to kick it. Got a stack and flip for my foes. Dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar. Let me watch out for my partners. Keep my money long, get my team strong. Let me run away from my problems.
Yo, what's good, original crew, man? We're back. Hey, we're back on the channel. We got a new ballin' for us today. Death was hiding in the strangest places. That's the title for you right there. But with that being said, before we get into... Oh, I don't know why I do this. Calm down.
I'm calm.
Whoa, Jamal.
Okay.
Let's go. Let's check it out. Let's see what's about. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Today, I'm going to tell you 3 stories about people who experienced huge changes to their lives. But they then found out that sometimes you just can't escape your past. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 2, 3, even 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please steal the like button's phone and systematically remove 1 digit from every single phone number that's saved in their contacts. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's stories. On the morning of March 27th, 1907, a 45-year-old woman named Mary Watson was cleaning her parlor in the small town of Wadesville, Indiana. She was standing on a step stool, and she was using a broom to sweep the cobwebs and the dust off the ceiling, and as she was doing that, she began to feel lightheaded. So immediately, she put the broom down and she climbed off the step stool, and she thought, she hadn't really had much to eat that morning, and so that must be why she was feeling dizzy. And so while she stood on the flat ground, waiting for this to pass, she reached over and she grabbed a biscuit and some coffee from the tray that her husband Zach had left for her before he had left for work that morning. Now, she didn't plan to rest here for too long, basically just until the dizziness cleared, and then she would get back to work because she had a lot of work still to do. She really wanted to have the house clean before Zach got back home. So Mary and Zach had only recently gotten married, just 5 months ago. And so they were still very much in the honeymoon phase of their relationship, where basically, everything was so great. They loved each other so much. Mary felt like she'd landed the perfect man. Zach he was smart, he was charming, and he had a good job running the local post office. And most of the time, he was pretty upbeat and had a good sense of humor. However, just a few weeks ago, right around the beginning of March, that had changed. Zach had suddenly become really moody and quite distant. And when he got home from work, instead of chatting with Mary like he used to, he would go straight to his study and just sit alone for hours. But Mary didn't have to ask him what was bothering him because she knew. She knew that this time of the year was really hard for her husband because he had actually been married previously, twice actually, and both of his previous wives had died in March. And in fact, they died just 1 year apart from each other. Whoa. So this month was just like a very tragic time.
Hold on, he got married that fast? That's crazy.
Died just 1 year apart from each other. So this month was just like a very tragic time for him. And these deaths were not like in the distant past. They were kind of recent. His first wife had died 2 years ago in March of 1905. And then his second wife had followed in March of 1906. So almost exactly 1 year ago to today's date, March of 1907. Now, Mary did think this was tragic, a horrible coincidence, But Mary's sisters, they found this pattern to be very suspicious, and they'd even tried to talk Mary out of going through with the wedding, asking if she really wanted to marry a man whose wives kept dropping dead. But Mary had brushed off their concerns because really deep down, she trusted him. She knew ultimately he really was a victim here of just terrible, unlucky coincidence. Now, the coroner had officially ruled that both of Zach's wives had died of sudden illnesses. And to some degree, to Mary's sisters, that only added to the suspicion. But to Mary, it seemed like it just sort of got rid of the suspicion of anything. How could Zach have had anything to do with his wives suddenly getting sick? It just didn't make any sense to her. However, despite firmly standing behind her husband here, what Mary did struggle with when it came to her husband's previous wives and this whole thing was that Zach clearly was still grieving his other wives. Like, they were clearly on his mind, as they should be, and she understood that, but that was tough. But Mary had nowhere to put these feelings. I mean, she couldn't be mad at him. I mean, his first wife, Sarah, they had been together for 34 years before she died. I mean, that was a whole life before Mary, and she knew that. And then, the second wife, it is what it is. It was a short marriage, but she couldn't blame him for the situation she was in. It was just difficult. But sometimes, despite logically understanding the situation that she was in and doing her best to sort of emotionally contain it, Mary sometimes got this feeling that it was almost like she was living in somebody else's house, or like she was living in somebody else's life, specifically Sarah's life. Sarah was Zach's first wife. They had been together for those 34 years. I mean, ever since Mary had moved into this home with Zach, which is where Sarah had lived for all those years, Mary had been hesitant to do anything, to rearrange furniture or change the ugly green wallpaper that she really wanted to change in the parlor here, or get rid of any of the old-fashioned decor. It's like she knew that, that would be sort of bad for Zach potentially, that he would see that as, disrespectful to his first wife and to some degree his second wife. Mary just sort of felt like she was the third wheel in a sense. But as Mary stood in that parlor with the ugly green wallpaper, waiting for her headache and her dizziness to clear from when she had been cleaning the ceiling here, she's having those thoughts about how difficult her life was, but she reminded herself that, despite it all, she was Zach's wife now. No matter how she felt about it, those were the facts. She was his wife and he was her husband. And so no matter how she felt about this house, the house was primarily her responsibility. And she was going to make sure that it was clean. So after taking a final sip of coffee, Mary grabbed her broom and she was about to climb back up on the stepladder to get back to cleaning the ceiling when she was hit with another really intense wave of nausea. She had to grab a table just to steady herself, and as she does, she feels this really intense, sharp cramp in her stomach that caused her to double over, and then before long, she
Did he make the biscuits this morning before he left and went to work? He made the biscuits, right? This is 1907. She's a housewife, right? And he made the biscuits.
Sharp cramp in her stomach that caused her to double over, and then before long, she collapsed to the ground right onto her knees, just writhing in pain. A few hours later, Mary's sister, Nancy, was standing outside of Mary and Zach's house, just absolutely breaking down, crying, just totally upset. And as she did this, she was watching as the undertaker loaded Mary's body into a horse-drawn wagon. Nancy couldn't believe how quickly this had all happened. I mean, she and Mary talked all the time.
What are you looking like that for?
I'm just like, what?
The undertaker.
That happened so quick.
She gone.
It happened quick, bro.
She's gone.
Okay, babe.
And that morning, Mary had sent a young neighbor over to Nancy's place to tell her that Mary said she was feeling sick and needed some help. But by the time Nancy arrived, it was too late. Mary was vomiting and she was convulsing. And by around 1 p.m., she was dead. And this was exactly what Nancy had feared would happen when Mary and Zach got married. She just hadn't imagined that it could possibly happen so quickly. So now, as the undertaker drove off with her sister's body inside, Nancy's gaze shifted to Zach, who was over on the porch talking to the town doctor. Zach had now lost 3 wives in 3 years, all in the same month too, like exactly a year apart.
Okay, babe.
And Nancy, I mean, at this point, she was sure that he had to be responsible. Like, how else could this ever be possible unless he was doing something to these women? And Nancy, she was determined to prove it. The next day, Nancy and the rest of Mary's family walked with the town doctor and with Zach through Zach and Mary's home, looking for clues about what could have killed Mary. And all of them were just peppering Zach with questions about what each of his wives had been doing right before they died. And so far, Nancy wasn't hearing anything that made her think that Zach was innocent. According to Zach, there was 0 connection between the 3 deaths, except for the fact that they all happened in March. One of the wives had eaten a full breakfast before she died, and one had eaten nothing before she died. And Mary had actually only had some coffee and apparently a couple of bites of biscuits before she died. Zach also said that his first and second wives had been complaining of feeling sick for about 2 days before they ultimately succumbed and died. But Mary had been basically perfectly fine right up until she just suddenly died. Now, to Nancy, it seemed like Zach was trying way too hard to make it all just seem sort of random. She just didn't believe that there was literally no connection between all 3 deaths. I mean, how could that be? This is way too coincidental. And so Nancy was very happy to see that the town doctor was systematically gathering up different things from inside the house as they walked around, like silverware and various food items, basically anything that Mary might have put in her mouth or maybe touched, because he planned to get them all tested to see if maybe there was poison involved here. And so Nancy was glad that, like, Zach's saying one thing, but we're gonna actually test some stuff and see if that's really true. And so Nancy began following the doctor as he was scooping up all these different things, and eventually they found their way into the parlor, which is where Mary ultimately died. And when they were in the parlor, the doctor just abruptly stopped, and then he pointed to something in the middle of the room. And then he turned and looked at Nancy and the rest of the group who were also coming in, and he just said, "I know what happened." And Nancy was so caught off guard by this. I mean, she figured this was going to take some time to figure out this mystery. She looked past the doctor into the parlor to where he had been pointing, and she expected to see some kind of like obvious clue, but to her confusion, there was just a step stool and then a dusty old broom. That was all he pointed to, and she couldn't understand what he was talking about. So it would turn out that the 3 wives actually did have something in common when it came to their untimely deaths.
Okay.
So in the early 1900s, the month of March was the time for spring cleaning. And spring cleaning was what all of Zach's wives had been doing right before they died. Specifically, all of them had been cleaning the parlor, which had that ugly green wallpaper in it. But this wallpaper was not just ugly. It also contained a toxic substance known as arsenic. And when Mary and both of Zach's other wives dusted with the broom, it kicked up a cloud of deadly particles that they all inhaled. And so the town doctor had the wallpaper tested, and he would confirm that all 3 women had died of poisoning. Except the culprit was not Zach, it was the wallpaper. A few weeks later, Zach would have that wallpaper torn down, and then he married a 4th wife, but this time, she outlived him.
That is crazy.
My bad, Zach. It was looking like you, my boy. I'm sorry. But that's crazy. Wallpaper?
Okay.
Wallpaper.
Wow.
And the sister had every right to be suspicious.
Because that is suspicious. Like, oh, you're like in the same month, too, and
you get married too fast right afterwards.
he said he don't let no grass grow on his future. But
He said, "I need somebody to clean this home."
I wonder how long with like his first wife Sarah. Like how long did they stay in that house? Because I'm like that's just
and
kinda,
with the wallpaper.
and with because y'all have been married 34 years. Is this her first time ever cleaning this?
Or
Like,
was the wallpaper new?
or was it new? That's a good question. Yeah.
Because you remember he said the reason why she didn't want to take it down is because the wife put the had something to do with the wallpaper.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, rest in peace to.
Oh, gone so early, bro.
I didn't get the second wife name.
I don't think he said it. I see. So Zach and Sarah was buried together. Yeah,
Yeah.
ZP's wife was ZP. Yeah, so they would have been buried together. Damn.
I wonder why they. Okay. Anyway,
They both were born in 1851. Okay. Damn, a month apart. That's crazy.
But rest in peace to everybody.
Yeah, that's a tragic
Mary,
case,
Zach,
bro.
Sarah, the second wife.
That was hiding in a strange place. Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
strange
there
place.
was.
I didn't see that coming.
I didn't see that either. I mean, well, kind of, but not really. Not really. Not the wallpaper.
Not the
I wasn't thinking
wallpaper.
about the wallpaper.
You was thinking
I was
poison, but
just
not
like-
the wallpaper.
No, what I was just thinking, like, I wrote like little notes. It was like dust, food, mug, because sometimes some mugs be containing like different chemicals and stuff
That's
like that.
true, that's true.
So, but other than that, I was just like, but it's just the time of year, and then like back to back, like that's just weird. But yeah.
Around the same time every year. He just got married too fast.
One morning in the spring of 1885, a young man named Henry Ziegland was leading a horse around his family's farm in Driner Township, Minnesota. The horse was recovering from a minor hoof injury, and now Henry was taking it for a walk to give it some light exercise and get a sense of how it was actually doing. And Henry was in an unusually good mood. He was enjoying the warm breeze, and he also just had this great feeling that he had his whole life ahead of him, which was really not a feeling that Henry was used to at all. So until recently, Henry had been engaged to a young woman named Maisie Tickner. Henry had started talking to her 5 years ago when they were both in their early 20s, and their initial romance had been great. They'd fallen for each other really quickly, and they'd actually moved in together really quickly, even though back then that kind of thing was definitely frowned upon unless you were married, but they're like, don't worry, we're gonna get married, it's okay. And so people were like, I don't know, but they were like, it doesn't matter. We're gonna get married, it's all gonna be good. Except the wedding had never really materialized. Now, Henry hadn't planned to break his promise to Maisie, but first he'd just been busy with his farming. And then Maisie had taken a new teaching job. And since they were already living together, Henry hadn't seen what the difference would be if they got married anyways. It just sort of seemed like, what's the big rush? But as the years went by and they continued not to get married, Maisie began pestering Henry more and more about just setting a date so they could finally get married and stop living this sort of scandalous life. And for Henry, he understood why she was doing this, but the more she asked, the more he sort of began to think, wait a minute, I don't know if I want to marry her. I don't know if this is a good idea at all for me. And then finally, just a few days ago, Maisie had sat Henry down in their kitchen and had given him an ultimatum. He could either marry her like he had promised, or they were done. And in that moment, Henry had sort of realized that ending this relationship was exactly what he wanted. So that day, he was like, okay, I guess we're done. He packed his things and he moved into his family's farm. And Maisie had been sort of caught off guard by this, because as much as she's the one positioning the ultimatum, acting like she's prepared to walk away too, in reality, she wasn't. She really wanted to get married. That's what she wanted. She was just trying to force him to finally do it. And so when he was like, okay, bye, we're over, it's like she tried to stop him, but then she began saying like, you're ruining my life. Like, you're ruining my life, not your life, my life. So a broken engagement, after having lived together and shared the same bed for years at a time, and then never getting married, that was a very bad situation for both parties. But at the time, it was far worse, socially, let's say, for the woman than it was for the man. And so in Maisie's mind, and I'm sure Henry understood this too, but for Maisie, it's sort of like, Henry, if you walk out on me right now, no one's gonna want me. Like, my life will be ruined and yours won't be. Like, you're the guy, you're gonna be able to go on and get married and I won't be able to. But Henry didn't really care and he left. And now, after a few days since the separation, Henry, despite logically knowing that he clearly had put Maisie in a very bad position, he knew that, but he knew internally as well, he had made the right decision. Because right now, I mean, he felt great. He felt free for the first time in a long time. And so he did what he had to do. And so Henry finished his laps with the horse, and then he walked it over to the watering trough, which was underneath this big oak tree near the barn. And he had just tied the horse to that oak tree to let it drink when he heard someone shouting his name. Henry spun around and he saw a man stalking toward him from across the field. And the man was Maisie's older brother, Filford. And his face was bright red, and he was glaring at Henry like he meant to kill him here, which Henry realized was a very real possibility, considering what Henry had just done to Filford's sister. And then on top of that, as Henry's sort of taking this all in, he sees that Filford doesn't just look mad. He's also carrying a rifle, this old-fashioned rifle. And when Henry saw the gun, he immediately panicked and he turned to run away, but the huge oak tree was in his way. He sort of bounced off the tree and he turned back around. And by this point, Filford had closed the distance and there was clearly nowhere where Henry could reasonably run without still clearly being in range of Filford's weapon. And so Henry, not knowing what else to do, just dropped to his knees and threw his hands up and begged Filford for mercy, telling him, like, you don't understand, like, we had to break up. Like, I would never want to hurt Maisie on purpose. You got to believe me. Like, she wouldn't want you to do this. Like, you got to spare me. She loved me. Like, let it go. And for a moment, Henry felt like maybe he'd gotten through to Filford and he wasn't going to get shot here. You know, Filford, who by this point was only a few feet away from Henry, he was still gripping his gun, just glaring at Henry. And there was this moment of just really intense silence. And then he said something that made Henry's stomach drop. He told him that he would have no way of knowing what Maisie would have wanted to do here with Henry, because earlier that very morning, his sister had taken her own life. And then Filford, he raised his rifle and he fired. Pain immediately exploded in Henry's head, and he felt himself get literally thrown backwards really hard. And he bounced off the oak tree and fell to the ground, expecting at any point for everything to just go black forever, to just die and be done with it. But after a few seconds, he realized he wasn't dead. His head was pounding from where he had just been shot, and he could feel blood running into his eyes and all over his whole body. So clearly he knows he's been shot, but like somehow he's still conscious. And then he heard the sound of Filford reloading his rifle. Henry considered trying to get up and making a run for it, but it was like, what chance did he really stand here? He's already been shot once. The guy's clearly willing to shoot him. He's reloading. He's right in front of him. How far can he possibly get before he gets shot again? So instead, he just lay still and prayed that maybe Filford would think he was dead and not shoot him again. And so Henry's heart hammered in his chest as he listened to the sounds, the mechanical sounds of Filford reloading this rifle. And this was a painfully slow process because Filford's gun was an old army musket from the Civil War. So he's like, packing gunpowder and like a lead pellet into the barrel of this gun. This is a lengthy reloading process. And this whole time, Henry, as he's listening to this, he's just holding his breath, trying to be still. But at the same time, he's getting more and more certain that he was about to die. Like, there was no way he was not about to get shot again. What else could Filford be doing? Finally, Henry heard the metal click of the gun cocking, which meant that it was now loaded. And so Henry, trying his best still not to move, he still tensed up a little bit, bracing for the impact. And then there was this deafening bang, just like the first one. As soon as he heard it, Henry flinched, but he didn't feel anything. Instead, he just heard a thump and then silence. He waited a few more seconds, and then he opened one eye, and Filford was lying a few feet away, bleeding profusely from what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot to his head. Despite being shot in the head, Henry would survive this attempt on his life, and Filford would die from the self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, Henry did understand that, by breaking up with Maisie, it had very likely led to her taking her life, and it almost got him killed, and it definitely led to Filford taking his life. Like, there's a lot of death and tragedy here because of something that, Henry largely did, but he didn't feel any guilt after he ultimately survived this attempt on his life. The way he rationalized it was he thought that Maisie and Filford were just both very weak. I mean, Maisie, instead of trying to move on and rebuild like a strong person, she had been weak and she had taken the easy way out. And Filford, he had one shot, point blank. He could have shot and killed Henry and gotten his justice, but he missed, and then he took the easy way out. He took his own life instead of facing consequences. And so Henry just felt like, screw those people. And after that day that he was attacked by Filford, it was like his luck just seemed to get better and better. His head wound really had been superficial and it healed quickly. And soon after he was fully recovered, he married a wealthy widow. And with her money, his farm grew. And he eventually became one of the richest men in the whole area. And as the years went by, his thoughts about Maisie and Filford just kind of faded into the background, until everything that happened just sort of felt like a distant memory from an entirely different life. That is, until 20 years later, on March 21st, 1905. On this morning, Henry was cutting down some old dying trees on his property with his teenage son. Now, at this point, Henry had plenty of farmhands, so he didn't have to do this kind of job himself. But he liked showing his son how things were done, so this was like a teaching moment. Now, so far that day, they'd been working their way through some of these smaller trees that needed to get removed. But the last one, the big oak tree near the barn, had wood that was so hard that their saws could not cut through it. So Henry explained to his son what you do in this type of situation, which is you get some dynamite and you literally blow the tree up. And Henry had some dynamite just for this occasion, and he grabbed it and he walked over to this oak tree and he jammed it inside of the hollow of the trunk. He told his son to get back, and then he lit the fuse, and then he hustled back with his son, and they hid behind shelter, and they watched and they waited. And after a few seconds, the fuse burned all the way into the dynamite, and then it exploded. 20 years earlier, when Henry was shot in the head by Filford and narrowly survived, well, that bullet that hit him, it literally ricocheted off his skull and lodged in the oak tree right behind him. Like it just basically bounced off his head. And that bullet remained lodged in that oak tree for the 20 years after. And then comes the day that Henry decides he wants to take this tree down and he can't cut it down. So what does he do? He puts dynamite inside and he decides he's gonna blow it up. And after lighting the fuse, he and his son, they go all the way 50 feet away, thinking they're well out of harm's way here for when this thing detonates. Except they weren't. When that dynamite exploded, the force of the explosion basically rocketed that bullet that was still lodged in the tree right back at Henry. It hit him square in the head, and this time it penetrated and it killed him instantly. So, in essence, Filford didn't miss. It just took 20 years for the bullet he fired to kill Henry.
That is insane.
Yo, what the fuck?
Now that's a story.
Now, what you said, now that's a story, bro.
It's a story, child.
Oh
What?
My. Oh my.
What a way to go out.
Well, you would think he would have kept that, or he wanted to. I don't know. I wouldn't even touch the tree.
Maybe he didn't know
He knew.
that it was inside.
No, I'm talking about that. I'm just saying.
Just the.
But it's still, you know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
Yeah.
I would have been like,
Yeah, true.
that's a memory for me. I survived. That's, you know, I wouldn't have took that tree down ever.
You wouldn't have?
Nah. But there's no telling what they was trying to clear it out for.
Yeah.
So, you know
for
what
a
I'm
reason
saying?
or something, yeah.
I still, man, that's a crazy. Like he said, 20 years later, came back and still got you. Damn. One last drink.
On the evening of November 22nd, 2018, a middle-aged woman named Mandy was sitting in her living room at her home in a coastal town in southern England, reading a book while the TV played as background noise. And as she was sitting there, she heard the distinctive sound of footsteps kind of shuffling down the stairs. And Mandy looked up and she watched as her wife, Lena, came stumbling down the stairs, and in her hand was her favorite cup, which was a mason jar with a metal straw in it. And Mandy watched as Lena stumbled her way into the living room and then began, stumbling over towards the kitchen. And as she did this, Mandy just kind of cringed, because Mandy knew what Lena was about to do. And sure enough, just a moment later, when Lena had made her way into the kitchen, sort of out of sight, Mandy heard the sound of the refrigerator door opening up, and then the distinctive sound of liquid being poured into a cup, as Lena made herself another cocktail of vodka and orange juice. So Mandy had married Lena 4 years ago, and for that entire time, Lena had been a drinker. But Mandy always tried hard not to harp too much on Lena for drinking too much, because she knew that Lena really only drank alcohol to help manage her overwhelming back pain. So about 40 years earlier, when Lena was much younger, she had been a competitive horse jockey and racehorse trainer. But when she was 21 years old, she had suffered this awful horse riding accident that had permanently damaged her spine. She had developed scoliosis and had been in constant pain from this injury ever since. And sometimes the pain would get so bad that Lena would literally just collapse to the ground and couldn't do anything. But alcohol numbed the pain a little bit. And sometimes the pain would get so bad that Lena would literally just collapse to the ground and just lay there writhing in pain. I mean, this was like a very serious amount of discomfort. Now, at first, Lena's doctors had been prescribing her fentanyl, a very powerful pain medication, to help manage her pain. But Lena began showing signs of becoming addicted to fentanyl. And so before that could really happen, doctors had stepped in and weaned her off of the fentanyl. But Lena at this point, she didn't want to become addicted to pills either, but she also still had this pain. And without the fentanyl, there was no pain numbing happening. And so Lena had begun self-medicating by drinking about half a liter of vodka every single day. And she would mix the vodka, often with orange juice, and she would carry it around the house in her mason jar with that metal straw. And so anytime Mandy saw her with that, she knew what she was doing. Now, Mandy knew that Lena's drinking was obviously an issue. I mean, they replaced addiction, for pills with alcohol addiction, but at the same time, Mandy just felt like, I can't really get in the way of this. She's in so much pain. What can really be done here? So after hearing the sound of Lena getting another drink, Mandy just went back to reading her book on the couch. But as she was reading, with the TV playing in the background and the sound of Lena sort of doing whatever she was doing in the kitchen, there was suddenly this really weird noise that actually pulled Mandy out of her book. It almost sounded like a gurgling sound that was coming from the kitchen. So Mandy got up to go see what was going on. When Mandy walked into the kitchen, she saw Lena was on the ground. She was laid out flat on the floor, still holding her mason jar. But Mandy didn't panic. I mean, Lena's falls were just a fact of life, and all Mandy needed to do now was just help Lena back up again. But when Mandy bent down to do that, she got a look at Lena's face. And in one terrible moment, she instantly understood what that gurgling noise was and what had happened to Lena. And so Mandy, she lunged for her phone and she called the police. It would turn out that night, Lena actually was not drunk. She was walking around with her favorite drinking cup, but she was actually going into the kitchen to get more water. She was just thirsty. The reason she was hobbling all around, sort of acting drunk, if you weren't looking closely, is just because of her back pain. That's what was causing her to stumble around. But in the kitchen, after filling up her mason jar with water, she stumbled and fell like she would when she was drunk. But again, this time it's just from pain. And she fell onto her mason jar. Specifically, her eye socket landed on that upturned metal straw, and it impaled her skull, punctured her brain, and caused a traumatic brain injury. The sound of her gurgling was because of that traumatic brain injury, which would ultimately kill her.
Oh my gosh. Jeez. That is a horrible way to go, bro.
You love your metal straws.
Yeah, but I don't have them just exposed either. Why I get thrown in this? Rest in peace to Lena.
Yes, 100%.
Rest in peace to Lena. Because that is sad. That is a horrible way to go out. I'm just going to the kitchen to get some water. Bro. My goodness. These stories was... What was the first? These stories was crazy.
Yeah, these are some devastating stories.
My goodness. Okay. Yes.
Hey, man, y'all spam us up. Y'all let us know y'all thoughts about it for us in the comments down below, man. But until next time, y'all know how it go, man. I do go by the name DJ New Kid and Sis.
Sierra Nicole.
We are.
Kid and C.
We are.
No time to kick it, got a stack of flip for my foes. Dollar, 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 dollar. Please tell me you can hear me. Don't turn your back and don't neglect me. Just let me know if you need me. Dollar, 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 dollar. Let me watch out for my partners.